Hey witches, and welcome back on my channel. I am sorry if you can hear my cat eating in the background. It is what it is. Today we're gonna talk about yet another witches Sabbath, which is called Mabon, or also simply the autumn equinox. Some people also call it Alban Elfid. But yeah, as I said, it is the celebration of the autumn equinox. So depending on the year in the northern hemisphere, it will fall between the 20th of September and the 24th-ish, and in the southern hemisphere between the 20th of March and the 24th of March. When one side of the world will be celebrating Mabon, the other will most likely be celebrating Ostara, or the spring equinox. And Mabon this year in 2021 happens to fall right on a full moon, and the full moon around that time is called the harvest moon, and it's pretty much related directly to what the autumn equinox is. Mabon is the time of the second harvest. This is where farmers and people who grow their own things would know how well their summer crops have done and how well their animals are going to be fed, and so themselves as well during the winter months. So it's quite an important time. Once again, day and night are of equal length. Because of that, it is a time of balance, light and darkness, femininity and masculinity. And if you're into astrology, it just so happens to fall right at the beginning of Libra season, which also is a sign of balance, and that's literally their whole sign character thing. It is a time for introspection, to look at what you've accomplished and look at the results of any plans, anything you've been doing. Has it been successful? Has it not? And it's also a sort of pagan Thanksgiving, if you want to see it that way, because like you're introspecting and looking at all the results of your food crops, but also anything else in your life. It's really a time to be grateful for what you've got, and I guess be grateful for what you don't have as well sometimes. And apparently the original American Thanksgiving was actually on, I think, the 3rd of October, or like way earlier and much closer to the autumn equinox as well. The Canadian Thanksgiving is also on October 10th, so also much closer to that date. It's a time to party before the darkest days and the cold months, but also a time to rest after the harvest. In the myth, at this time, the goddess starts to lie down and rest, and then so she'll sleep through the winter months and then be reborn. She's just getting comfortable. She's not asleep just yet. The green man has sacrificed, and his seeds are entering the earth, where they're gonna be safe the whole winter. In some beliefs, at this time of the year, the god prepares his descent in the underworld. We're gonna talk a little bit more about the name Mabon specifically in a little while, but for now, let's see how people have celebrated this around the world. A lot of people still today gather at Stonehenge to watch the sunrise. A lot of people believe that this was the purpose of Stonehenge, to sort of track the movement of the sun. In Mexico, there is a Maya temple at Chichen Itza, which I mentioned, I think, in my Litha video, where on the autumn equinox, the light shines on it in a way that it looks like the shadow of a snake moving like this. So people also gather there. There is something similar in New Mexico at Chaco Canyon, where at all the solstices and equinoxes, so on the autumn equinox as well, the light will sort of form these shapes on a rock. In Japan, there is this holiday called Higan. So Higan would mean something like the other shore of the Sansu River. And in Buddhist belief, it's said to separate the afterlife. And it occurs around the autumn equinox, and I think it's for a full week. And during the spring equinox as well, there's like a full week celebration, where in both cases, people honor their ancestors and will often go back to their hometowns and see their family Germany. In China and in Vietnam and around that area, there is the Moon Festival that's celebrated on the full moon closest to the autumn equinox, and this year it just happens to be right on the autumn equinox. It is to celebrate the harvest as well. And around that time as well, but on the 29th of September, so it's kind of close, there is the Christian celebration of Michaelmas. Saint Michael. I'm gonna say Michael. I don't know if it's Michael or Michael. Saint Mike. Saint Michael is actually seen as the protector against the dark of the night. So it's kind of relevant to be around that time of the year season-wise, since the dark night is actually coming. This one is more of a fun fact, but in modern days, the Oktoberfest, the famous Oktoberfest in Germany, actually starts on the autumn equinox. Now, that is not when it started. Back in the day, it was actually in October. I don't know, I just thought it was funny because it's still like this big celebration, a lot of drinking, and it sort of has to do with the harvest because you have to harvest stuff to make beer. So the name Mabon for this pagan holiday actually appeared in the 1970s, so the name itself is quite modern, and it was taken from a Welsh deity, basically the Welsh sun god. His name is Mabon ap Madron, which essentially means son of the mother. The Madron, or his mother, was seen as a triple goddess as well, and he represented what most sun deities usually represent, so youth, vitality, love, sex. He was also a hunter. In that way, a lot of people say that he is derived from Mabon, who was a sun deity in northern Britain and also Gaul. So elsewhere in the Celtic world, you can see that the names are very similar as well. Apparently, the Welsh mythology is very deeply rooted in real facts. So there's a chance that the myth of Mabon was rooted in some real story or from a real person. His myth is actually found in the Mabinogion, which is the earliest prose stories of Britain. It should actually have been Mabinogi, which means boyhood, and it comes from the stem mab or mac as well, that we can see in Irish and Scottish. Mac something basically means son of. So Mabon is mostly like a representation of the theme of the sun. Therefore, some other people give him other names as well, since he represents that theme, and his own myth isn't very elaborated. So what we know is that he was kidnapped from his mother when he was only 3 days old and was never to be seen again. He was actually being held captive in the underworld in some versions, and in other versions he was just being held in Gloucester. Long story short, he was saved by King Arthur's men and a big giant talking salmon, which sounds weird like that, but in the Celtic world the salmon was like the wisest animal, so King Arthur's men went to ask the salmon. But that is essentially all we know about this Mabon ap Madron. He doesn't really have a name, he's just named the son of the mother. But there are more myths that I'm not gonna get into that talk about this theme around the sun, and oftentimes they are also separated from their mother. What does this all have to do with the autumn equinox? Well, it's simply the idea of, you know, being born, being kidnapped, or in the underworld, or sort of captured, you know, in a sense dead, and then being reborn. So it does remind of the cycle of seasons in a way. So as I said, other myths could be related to Mabon, other characters such as these, which I'm not gonna even try to pronounce. And then later on, when Britain was under Roman control, he came to be associated with Apollo, who also represents youth. Other deities relevant to the autumn equinox are Persephone, since at that time of the year she allegedly goes back into the underworld. Demeter, her mother. Dionysus or Bacchus, he's a god of many things, but in that case of wine and orchards. And then we have some of the darker goddesses such as Hecate, the Morrigan, the idea of the crone or the darker lady, older lady starting to rise. I know this sounds very vague. I'm planning on elaborating more on deities and mythology in some more videos. If you want to do your own research on the Morrigan, Hecate, Persephone, go ahead. Some symbols for Mabon are the cornucopia, horn of plenty, I think it's also called. It's this sort of horn basket filled with fruits and harvests, and it essentially represents abundance, but also sort of this idea of balance, since it looks both feminine and masculine. Important symbol is also the apple, hence why I mentioned Dionysus. The apple is actually a very important symbol for pagans. It represents many things such as life, healing, or health in general, wholeness. And when you cut it like this, then you can see a pentagram in it, which is also important for pagans. And I mean, it's also their time of the year. That is apple season. So that's also mainly why they're a symbol. And that's just the same for gourds as well. They start popping up here and there. So gourds and squashes and pumpkins. Pumpkin season! We love it. Acorns are also relevant, or just any type of nuts in general that would be ripe. Squirrels love them. I guess squirrels could also be a symbol. I read it nowhere, but I'm just adding it to the lot. Squirrels. And also autumn leaves, since some trees are actually starting to already lose their leaves. It's officially the start of autumn, yay! So colors relevant to Mabon are red, orange, gold, brown, and green, possibly more dark green. Now let's jump into how to celebrate it. It doesn't have to be complicated. Go apple picking, as I mentioned, it's their season. Create or fill a cornucopia, put it on your altar. You can visit a local market and get some nice stuff from their harvest. It's a good time to do spells for balance, calm, and protection for the winter months coming. It's a time also to end any project. It's a good time to cleanse your home and cleanse it from negative energies, and also just clean out stuff that you don't want anymore. It's like a bit of a renewal in a way. You can take a walk in the woods and look for signs of autumn. You can decorate your home for autumn. You know, it's never a bad idea to have a bonfire, gather with family, count your blessings. It's a time to be grateful, to be thankful, and to spend time with your loved ones. And feast, as always. So food. Especially when it's starting to get cold, like food is so comforting. Obviously, you can eat apples, you can make apple cakes, apple crumbles, my favorite. Homemade bread is always nice. Cinnamon, squash, sweet potatoes, carrots, or any root vegetables, nuts, as I mentioned, grains, seeds, anything from your own harvest, fruit bread and fruit cakes, pomegranates as well. I think this is rooted in the Greek myths or the Greek autumn equinox, but anyway, pomegranates. It's like a symbol of the underworld. We'll talk a little bit more in my next Sabbath for Samhain, which I'm so excited about. It's actually the last one. Oh my god. Okay, last but not the least, wine. I mean, some good wine. So yeah, as I just said, we're only missing one Sabbath on this list, and it is my personal favorite. Oh wow, that went fast. So, I hope you enjoyed that video. I feel like I was trying to dig deeper, but I couldn't find much, so maybe I'm missing some info. But I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope it was interesting. I hope it helped you in some way. Please, if you haven't subscribed just yet, do it right now. It takes 5 seconds, and honestly, I have a bunch of content like this coming, and even more, especially in October. Halloween weekend is coming, and I've got so much planned. So if you like this type of content, please subscribe. So my stupid camera just died on me as I was telling you goodbye. As I was saying, if you have anything you want me to cover next, please let me know down in the comments. Also subscribe, I think is what I was saying. On this note, I'm gonna go. You guys can follow me on all of my social medias to see what I do in the meantime, and I wish you an excellent Mabon. Even if you're not doing much, let's at least take like 5 minutes to sit down and be grateful for one thing, like even one thing. It's been rough, but let's be grateful for at least one thing. Bye.